What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be taking a nostalgic step back into the past and talk about Blockbuster Video.
Imagine the perfect video store. It would have a great selection, right? Right! Over 10,000 videos. 3 evening rentals, so no rush, no hassle. Fast checkout. 24-hour quick drop return. Open late every night. Well, the perfect video store.
Welcome to Blockbuster Video.
Is popping up all over the country. There's one near you.
Blockbuster Video. Wow, what a difference.
So in order to talk about the decline of Blockbuster Video, we need to talk about its rise in the early 1980s. At this time, Cook Data Services Inc. formed in the year 1982, and this company was founded by David Cook to supply computer software services to Texas's oil and gas industry. Unfortunately, at this time, the oil and gas industry was in a decline, and David was without many customers in the beginning. While searching for other ways to generate revenue, his wife, Sandy Cook, suggested entering in the video rental business as she was a massive movie fan. Sandy Cook did months of research into the video rental industry and came up with a feasible business plan, so David, naturally, like a husband does, sold all his software and oil and gas industry stuff, and opened up the very first Blockbuster store on October 19th of 1985. And along with this, he had 8,000 tapes covering over 6,500 video titles. And this inventory was many times larger than most video rental stores at the time. And another difference between other video rental stores at the time and Blockbuster was that Blockbuster displayed tapes on shelves similar to a bookstore, and this made it very easy to keep track of movies in stock, and also made it very easy for consumers to just grab a movie, check out. And Blockbuster also pioneered some things that are used a lot today, the use of magnetic strips on movie boxes to combat theft, and a laser scanning system that used barcodes on tapes, and they made transactions much more efficient with these practices. The first Blockbuster store was an immediate hit. David and Sandy Cook discovered there was a huge demand for renting video movies, more than they had previously suspected. So much so that by the end of the next summer, in 1986, David Cook had expanded the Blockbuster concept and opened 3 brand new stores. He also changed the name of Cook Data Services to Blockbuster Entertainment Corporation. But even though Blockbuster had an easy time coming into the market, there was some issues when the company began spending more money than it was making. So David Cook began needing to spend more money to make more money. He began to pursue investors for Blockbuster, and why wouldn't he? This was a fresh new company and it had a genius business model, so there was no reason for people not to invest. After some initial interest, a columnist began raising doubts about investing with David Cook because of his failed software company for the oil and gas industry. This article was put out before the sale of Blockbuster stock took place, and because of all the new raised doubts about David Cook's reputation in business, the Blockbuster Entertainment Corporation finished off 1986 with a loss of $3.2 million and no new investors. Well, just about a year after being in constant financial struggle with Blockbuster, in February of 1987, David Cook got some buyers. Cook sold 1/3 of the Blockbuster company to a group of 3 investors who were all former associates at Waste Management Inc. The group invested a total of $18.6 million combined in Blockbuster stock, and David Cook eventually surrendered full control of Blockbuster to one of the investors named Wayne Huizenga. And Wayne became the dominant force at Blockbuster for the foreseeable future. Pretty soon after getting these initial investments, founder David Cook left the company altogether. So one of Wayne's first big moves was relocating Blockbuster's headquarters from Texas to Florida, and by the summer of 1987, Blockbuster expanded to 15 stores and franchised 20 others. Huizenga was now clearly setting out to become the most dominant player in the video rental scene. He kept many of Cook's policies in place, such as the store hours, the 3-day rental policy, and always having a broad selection of movie titles. And despite what many people believe was the key to their success, Blockbuster's rentals were actually 70% made up of non-hit movies, which allowed them to get bigger movies at cheaper rates. And one thing Wayne wanted to change from Cook's initial business plan was X-rated movies. He removed X-rated movies completely from Blockbuster's catalog and pursued a more family-friendly approach. With all these policies in place, Blockbuster kicked its new massive expansion plan into full gear. They began buying up smaller video store chains that dominated markets that Blockbuster was weak in, and used that as a shortcut for quick expansion. Blockbuster soared through the 1980s, continuing the impressive growth in both stores and revenue, and ending the decade with over 1,000 stores and selling nearly $200 million in revenue. So Blockbuster naturally was looking to continue its massive expansion, even looking into foreign markets around the end of the 1980s and early 1990s, and they opened the Ritz Video Store in South London, England, as a way to expand into foreign markets with their video rental stores.
Ritz Video? Now rent Sega video games! It's mind-blowing!
These stores contributed to the 1,000 stores that Blockbuster ended the 80s with, and were part of the steady growth beginning in the 1990s. Blockbuster's biggest acquisition in the beginning of the 1990s was E-Roll's video store chain with 200 stores for $30 million.
Let's face it, the most important thing in a video club is selection. And selection is just another way to say Errol's. Errol's has the hits, has more movies, more kinds of movies. You want proof? Just stick your head in the door and count. You'll need a bunch of fingers and a bunch of toes with all the tapes we've got. And during our March membership sale, you can count on something else. Savings. A 6-month membership is only $11. Hit movies, more kinds of movies at Errol's Video Clubs. Count on it.
Although Blockbuster continued its strong pace of new store openings in 1990, the slowing growth of the video rental industry was becoming evident. Though the company's earnings grew an astronomical 114% in 1988, they contracted to a still impressive 93% rate of growth in 1989, followed by a 48% rate of growth in 1990. And keeping with this trend, first quarter financial results for 1991 were disappointing, and Huizenga blamed the Gulf War for keeping people interested in television news instead of renting videos. So Blockbuster ended the 1990s with a whopping 9,000 stores. So you can see Blockbuster was doing great. I'm not going to go through every little detail about the 1990s, but just know that they had a huge merger with Viacom, and Blockbuster was keeping up. And they were the largest video rental store pretty much worldwide at the time. Blockbuster stores were everywhere, and I'm sure everyone born in the 1980s and through the late 1990s and even the early 2000s has memories of going into Blockbuster and getting screwed over by late fees. So in the late 1990s, a company created by a man named Reed Hastings, who went into a Blockbuster and was charged a $40 late fee for the movie Apollo 13, was rising into popularity with his new company called NETFLIX. This story, according to founder Reed Hastings, is what gave him the idea for an online service where you're charged a flat rate and can rent movies with no late fees. The movies would get mailed to your door. These movies were always in stock because instead of having an operating store where real estate was eaten up by unnecessary things, these movies were stored in distribution centers that can hold much more movies. Now, even though Netflix seemed a lot more convenient at first, it was received poorly. Movies would take long to mail out. People wanted their movies faster and easier. And for many people, it was just easier to drive to their local Blockbuster store and not have to wait the 3 to 5 business days that Netflix was taking at the time. So at the first, Blockbuster didn't treat Netflix as a legitimate threat, and that is at first. In the early to mid 2000s, Netflix became better and better and began getting newer movies, faster shipping times, and of course, they still had the no late fees policy. So now, contrary to many people's beliefs, Blockbuster wasn't refusing to adapt. Blockbuster actually attempted a similar service when Netflix began this massive traction. The problem was that they had thousands of stores that were franchised and wouldn't follow the mailing service system that Blockbuster was trying to implement. And they weren't just about to abandon thousands of their stores worldwide. They also had hundreds of millions of dollars invested into physical movies, and dropping everything was just not feasible for them. Blockbuster attempted to gain more popularity when they began falling by doing a new ad campaign calling for no more late fees for movies. This was a bold action, but it created massive issues for the company. One of the main reasons that late fees were implemented to begin with was to encourage people to return movies so that they would be in stock very often. But suddenly popular movies would be rented and weeks would go by where the movies weren't returned. Eventually, Blockbuster found a way to make it work without going back on their word of no more late fees. They also found a way to do their version of a mail-in service called Blockbuster by Mail, and this came around 2006 when Blockbuster was really near its deathbed already. And something that they actually had a little bit of an upper hand with at the time was that you can return the movies to a Blockbuster location and check one out at the store or go check another one out online. So they had that actually as an advantage over Netflix. But like I said, Blockbuster tried. They were just very late. Netflix was beginning to trend into streaming instantly from the Netflix website in 2007.
Buy some peanut brittle and I'll raise money.
Peanut brittle. Want to watch a movie?
Now?
Now.
Now.
Yeah, now.
Right here, right now.
Right now.
Really?
Let's do this.
Really?
Get in here.
Okay.
Now with Netflix, it's easy. Just press play and start watching a movie on your PC in as little as 30 seconds. DVDs in the mail fast and movies on your PC instantly.
This may have been the move that directly led to Blockbuster's demise. Blockbuster was just catching up with Netflix as far as getting the movies delivered to people, and they were just catching up with their new service, and Netflix essentially threw a curveball at Blockbuster, and it's one that they weren't expecting. And Blockbuster On Demand was later attempted as a competition to Netflix streaming, but at that time, by the time Blockbuster caught up, there was just no competing. Blockbuster had essentially bought themselves into their demise. And in the coming years, Redbox would take over the physical format scene with $1 DVD rentals and an easy-to-use kiosk system where you didn't have to go into a physical store. And Netflix eventually phased out the whole DVD thing completely around 2015, I believe. So just a few years after Blockbuster's huge demise. Now, a lot of people think that this is the end of the story and that Blockbuster essentially died in 2010 and where we are today. But actually, Blockbuster was purchased by Dish Network, and though Dish Network initially vowed to keep stores open, that became impossible. Blockbuster sold to Dish Network with a total of 1,700 stores after having nearly 10,000 stores in the 1990s. But the remaining 1,700 stores are mostly gone today.
Maybe we should rewind for a minute. You've seen the headlines. Blockbuster went bankrupt in 2010. It closed its last 300 stores in 2013. So how is this even possible?
For a lot of people, they haven't seen a Blockbuster store in maybe 5 or 6 years.
Back when Blockbuster shut down, franchise owner Alan Payne decided to keep his doors open. Today, he owns 9 of the last 12 Blockbusters left in the entire country. There were once over 9,000 worldwide.
Almost half of the families in the entire country were going in a video store every week. I don't know of any other industries that have gone from nothing to just an integral part of the culture that fast.
Blockbuster was rumored to attempt a comeback in 2014. Articles were written announcing that they were going to open 10 new stores, but this was later debunked by Dish Network executives. They did, however, try a Redbox-style kiosk system and try to get their streaming service off the ground, but these attempts just simply didn't work. Blockbuster was just too far behind. Blockbuster, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting cases of bankruptcy. They at one point had close to 10,000 stores. They were on top of the world and actually accomplished the goal that they had set out to be. They were the biggest video rental brand ever created. They had bought out their competitors and were on top, but the times changed for a company that wanted to but just simply couldn't. Blockbuster is in many ways a company that was only going to flourish until something better came along. It was a product of the era it was created in. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching the video. This video was actually really fun to make. It took a long time to make, but it was fun to make. Remember to follow all my social medias on screen, and thank you guys so much for watching.
Here